I want to say a few things about people who come to the conclusion that the best thing for them is to move, not to rebuild. I mentioned before that it's so important that people's decisions are respected. You might know people quite well, but you don't know certain aspects of their experience. And once you know them, you can understand why they decide this or that after a disaster. But when we're in this state of tension, our minds are programmed to make decisions. And so we become much more decisive, and that may look like being judgmental. You should stay, you should do this, you shouldn't go this, you should whatever. I think it's so important to step back and say everyone has to find their way. We can listen and talk and discuss, but it's so important they find their way and work out what they want to do. It's not a logical or rational decision. It's an emotional decision. It's a decision to do with my whole being. Because this decision is about not the recovery from the disaster, but the foundation for the next stage of my life. That's what I actually think recovery is all about. Is how do we move on from what's happened? What's the connection? Can I carry the life I had over into the next stage? Some people were sort of thinking about doing something different anyway, so it becomes the catalyst to actually make that step. And often when they make that step, they will see things very differently. And for people who stay in the environment, the familiar environment, they're in that very familiar framework of their long-standing community. But somebody who's actually stepped out of it suddenly sees another world. And I think if we say that recovery is about finding the foundation for the next stage of your life and finding what is the central focus of the next stage of your life. Not in any particular way, but it may be, but you know, in the sense of where's the meaning of my life going? What do I want to do? Where do I want to be? How do I want to live? And some people can sort of make that decision very quickly. I've met people who've been very quick and decisive. I've met other people who've waited a while, maybe several years, and then they've made the decision and suddenly decided, I'm not going to continue to rebuild, I'm going. Just at the point at which perhaps they got their payout and they were ready to go. And I've had that time to think. Now, the important thing is that people can approach the future in a creative way, in the way that perhaps they approached the future before the disaster. They had plans and ideals and values and things they wanted to do. They'll be different now. Maybe, as I said before, they've actually learned to value some things differently as a result of the experience they went through. I know that some people were amazed that they didn't have some terrible catastrophe, and that's made them think about what's really important in life. So doing that kind of evaluation is really important. And I think when people do move, it's really helpful to think about the combination of the loss of the good things about where you were before, and that's going to produce sadness, and the interest and excitement about the new place and the new environment, the new lifestyle. You know, it's important to think about it this way, that if you have any kind of positive feelings or attachment or enjoyment of one situation, when you leave it, you're going to be sad. That's what sadness is. I'm losing something that was good. But often we make the decision to leave not for the fact that we have things that we like about it, but for other reasons. So we might love to live in a forest, but having had the disaster, we say, I just don't feel quite safe again. And that's what I'm looking for, is that sense of safety so I can have that relaxation experience. And you still miss the beautiful things about the forest. You may have lived there for some years and you really enjoyed it and you've got lots of nice memories. I think it's important to accept that that will be sad, and not to get derailed by that. You know, people could say you should never leave anywhere because you feel sad. No, that's not right. You leave not because of your emotions, but because of other important values. And you accept the sadness and you work that through, and then you settle into the new place and make an attachment to it. And when that happens, there can be some conflicting feelings, particularly if we had a strong connection with our community. People sometimes feel guilty. They sometimes feel they're betraying the community. They should stay there with people and help them and be with them and rebuild, but it's just not right. And so I think it's important to acknowledge the reasonableness of these emotions, to be there as reactions. If I had an attachment to my neighbours, we had good friendships and we did things together, then of course I'm going to miss them. And if I'm going to miss them, I'll perhaps feel as though, you know, I've let them down. But you don't have to devote your life to your neighbours. You know, you've got your own life to lead. But these are feelings that I think we should recognise and give some space to, and talk about them. Maybe come back and have a bit of a reunion with the neighbours and talk with them and ask them how they're going, so you don't take away and just hold on that image of when they were doing it tough and everything was in a bit of chaos, but you come back and see them doing well later and you can enjoy it with them. And of course we can keep friendships, can't we, even if we move away. And the same with them, to see you've made your decision and you're leading a different life now and you're enjoying it. So I think it's very important for people to be thoughtful about what they say, particularly community members when people want to move. Just bear in mind you don't know the full story. They're probably not telling you. They may not even know why they feel they need to do it. And let them know that they were valued. Of course, if they were valued and they leave, you feel loss, which may make us feel annoyed with them. We didn't want them to leave. They were adding to our load of unhappiness. But really, that's very different from saying, hey, you were good neighbours, we enjoyed having you there, and we're going to miss you. And, you know, that's something that's really nice. It gives them a good feeling and you a good feeling. And we're just accepting that little bit of sadness we have from, and that's where, again, maybe rituals. It may be nice to have a sort of, where are we all now, in you know, at a certain point when people have, most people have rebuilt, hopefully everybody rebuilt. Might be a cause for a celebration. And so coming back and revisiting helps to make those little anchor points that enable us to preserve the sense of time passing. So we don't have this time warp experience. We have a sense of, yeah, we've really been through this, and we can remember what happened. We don't have just lost 2 years. We've got, we lost it from the point of view of what we were doing before, but we've got a very valuable bundle of experience there and learnings about ourselves and each other that we can respect and talk about and draw on for many years. And another thing I want to say is that I think for those people that move away, it's very important to keep processing the trauma. I remember a story that came out of Black Saturday when I was talking to a community member from a community that had regular meals together over a number of years during the recovery period. And this person told me that there was a very familiar community member who lost everything and moved away to another state. And they had relatives, so they actually reorganised their life to move and live with these other relatives. And a year later, they came back for the anniversary. And this person said, when she came back, she came along to the meal that we had, our community meal, and I was standing here looking at her and I thought, she's a bit odd, she's pretty strange. Look at her, look at how she's talking and what she's saying. She's quite odd. And then I suddenly realised, actually, we were all like that after the fire. We were all a bit crazy and odd. And of course they'd talk to each other about it, hence he could recognise it. But then the penny dropped and he realised, actually we've all moved on because we've been talking together and she hasn't. And you can imagine in another state people wouldn't really understand it and maybe she wouldn't talk about it. And so here she comes back and she's got a lot of unprocessed stuff that's just sitting there. Now I think it's a sort of just a little story, but I think it suggests that a bit of a risk for people who move away to get to safety is that they may not fully process and put the trauma in the past, and it may be lurking there a bit like a jack-in-a-box, so that when something happens, bang, out it pops years later. And so, I think it's perhaps important to be aware, notice your own triggers if you've moved away. Maybe go back and visit the community and see how it's moved on. Tell the stories, think about the losses, have a little ceremony to remember them every now and again. It's nice for children to know the things that really meant a lot to their parents that were lost. It helps them get a sense of the family history, what we had from a picture from my great-grandmother. These are elements of history which also become elements of identity, who we are, our family, our life story. So these are, in a way, a similar sort of tasks to perform, and they're to be done differently when people move away. But one of the things that I think is very important to give attention to is that when you move away, you develop a new life, we go back to that idea of disruption, and that the development of routines that are to create repeated experience of things that we value. We build our routines around our values so that we don't just do them occasionally when we think of them. We have regular ways of anchoring them in our lives and organising our lives around them. And so whenever we move away, I think it's very important that we try to take stock of what was important in the previous place. How do we establish those, design and build routines around what we want to hold on to so that they will be there without thinking. That's the real art of creating a lifestyle, is that you do things without thinking about them. They just happen. And that then starts to build the sense of safety and security that we need to protect us from trauma, that we have our assumptions in our new environment that help us to be confident and clear, and to actually think about what have we learnt, as I've spoken about before in some of the other areas of people's lives, that they think about what we've learned, and this sense of what do I take, this sense of emphasising not just the pain and the disruption and the sadness, but that we've got through it together, that we've held the kids' growth on track, and they're developing into their next phases and doing well and so on. And if they're struggling, then we're into problem solving, and who do we get to help us do this? And we understand in the recovery system that the people that move away, they're recovering too, taking recovery as the foundation for the next phase of life. And so they also have an entitlement to use some of the recovery services. And if you're not sure in your new environment what services are available, maybe you check back with the people in the environment that you've left and make links and get people to help you sort out what's available. Because it's we know that most people are very resilient and very creative, but we've got to remember a disaster is a pervasive experience. It touches every area of our life, and no one is going to be very experienced in disasters, I hope. So we don't have to work it all out the hard way. It's so important to then talk to people, to access professional advice and help, in not just in the emotional side but in all sorts of areas, so that we can do it as a creative project of having unwanted, but still we've had an opportunity to reform our lives. And how do we do that in the most creative way possible? And then we'll be like people that have told me many years later that they changed their lifestyle dramatically, and they've had a really good life since as a result of a disaster. So those thoughts, I think, maybe help us to be confident that, given time, that as we come out through the hard yards of the recovery process, if we give time and energy to ourselves, which means taking time out from our busyness to just be, to reflect on what we've been through, to tell a story to ourselves and to each other, and to ask ourselves, what have we learnt? Then we can be confident that our lives can be better for it in the long run. Even if they're a little sadder, they'll be a little bit more prepared for adversities and difficulties, and then we'll actually get through them much better.